Hello to everyone out there in listeners land. This is the Not So Common Sense podcast, the home of thinking often and questioning everything. I am your host, Marquita B. Critical thinkers, let's get into it. Hello, critical thinkers. Welcome to this week's weekly wrap-up. I'm going to talk about a variety of topics, give my commentary, and then I will bid you farewell to have a good week, because Monday is right around the corner. But without further ado, Sidney Poitier passing. We're talking about a man who broke barriers for Black people in film. He was the first Black man to win an Academy Award for Best Actor for the movie Lilies in the Field. Just an all-around, amazing guy from the actor perspective. My favorite film of his would have to be Look Who's Coming to Dinner. But I do give an honorable mention to Raisin in the Sun. That's also a good one. So I just want to say with that, rest in peace, Mr. Poitier. Your movies will live on forever. And without further ado, let's move on into sports. Antonio Brown has been in the news all week. Normally I would say with his, antics, CTE is real. However, in this case, I really don't think CTE played a large role in his walk off the field during last Sunday's Bucks and Jets game. I think actually the Bucks did him dirty. They knew his ankle was injured prior to the game. He expressed that it was injured during the game. He didn't want to play. He wanted to be healthy, for the playoffs. So he wanted to basically reserve his ankle, get it healthy, and then, help the Bucks during the playoffs. And if you think about it, it didn't benefit him to sit down. He was actually losing money by sitting out or saying that he couldn't play. He was due a $1 million bonus if he caught 8 catches, had 55 receiving yards, and had a touchdown. Each of those 3 alone would have earned him a bonus of $333,333, which would have been, if he had gotten all 3, would have been a cool $1 million in his pocket. Yeah, he forewent the money to sit out in hopes that he would help the team in the playoffs. Yes, he could have played injured, but why risk it? All I'm saying is, if we know Antonio Brown, we know him to be full of antics. I'm not at all a doctor, and I certainly can't diagnose anyone with CTE. But I will say, in 2016, in the Steelers-Bengals game, Vontaze Burfict rocked Antonio Brown's world with a mean hit. He literally took his head off. It was a lot. Brown, in my opinion, has not been the same since that game. His antics have caused him to be all over the place since that game. But in this case, he had a right to be upset with his team. Well, really, Bruce Arians, the coach, for how things were handled as it relates to his injury. I don't blame Brown for walking off the field, but I do agree he could have handled it better and in a more professional manner. Arians, however, really needs to do better as well. He's the coach, and him, cussing him out and all that stuff in the interviews after the game, it was just ridiculous. But anyway, moving on to better news. Pittsburgh Steelers and Ben Roethlisberger. Now, for any of y'all who know me, I am a huge Pittsburgh Steelers fan. I was born into Steelerism, as I like to say, and I've never turned back. So naturally, I have to mention that I had a moment during Monday night's game where the Steelers played the Browns, which is supposedly Ben's last Monday night game. I was all in my feelings with this game, and I literally stayed up until about 1:30 in the morning listening to Sports Center and other post-game interviews. And I have to say, just from the time that from the time the game began, but additionally, once the game ended, Ben didn't want to leave the stadium. It was at Heinz Field, so at home. The ticket people who purchased tickets, the fans, they literally did not leave that stadium. Ben, he did a half a lap around the stadium. Then he came and sat down. Then his family came out. During all of this, it was well after the game had ended. And those people were not leaving their seats. They all came closer to the field. The stadium was packed still. Just the outpouring of love for Ben was, it was nothing more. It was remarkable. I'm getting tongue-tied there because it was so much. I personally have been waiting for Ben to retire for quite some time now. As I feel as though the Steelers need some fresh blood at the quarterback role. With that said, I just want to end it by saying thanks, Ben, for 18 amazing seasons and the Super Bowls that you've allowed us to win. Like it's been amazing. I am happy for him to move into the next chapter of his life. I would almost like to see him come back as either a commentator or a quarterback coach for the Steelers, or in any other capacity. But his way with the game, it's remarkable. So definitely happy for him. Now that's enough of sports. Let's get into some nitty gritty hot topics that have been on the burner. We do know, I stated in my last podcast, that the Supreme Court, as of January the 7th, is reviewing all things related to the mandate. And I just want to briefly step out and say, Mike Pence, whom I really can't stand, has a nonprofit political advocacy group called Advancing American Freedom. And he submitted documentation for the Supreme Court hearings on how OSHA violated the Constitution with the mandate when they imposed it without congressional approval. So I thought that was interesting. I'm like, I don't know if he's trying to redeem himself, but okay, he gets a point for that. I still don't like him, but he gets a point for that. And apparently, based on media outlets, the Supreme Court, should have all of the hearings or their decision should be made within the next few days. So, as I stated previously, those fines and penalties are supposed to take effect starting tomorrow. I hadn't heard that they had been pushed back, but it would be interesting to see, what would happen tomorrow. Of course, they just started hearing everything on Friday, so probably not enough time, but, we shall see. All right, next topic I want to cover is the flu, or Rona. I was listening to Fox 5 DC on January the 7th. To be specific, when I heard some foolishness about the flu last year, and I ended up recording a clip from Dr. Amish Shadoza and the interviewer Holly Morris from Fox 5 DC, and they were discussing the flu and Rona, and I'm just going to play a quick clip of that because I just really want you to hear what he has to say because I found it quite interesting. All right.
Security, good morning. Always good to see you, doctor.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, let's talk about this flu Rona. First, what are the chances, right, for someone to get both? But how do you know if you have both?
This is something that we saw early on in the pandemic when flu was circulating, and then unfortunately flu went down as people social distance, and now it's coming back, so people can get co-infected. You really can't tell if you're infected with one or both of these because they've got such overlapping symptoms, and it occurs in a minority of patients. And I think it's just a reminder to people that flu is circulating and that you should get vaccinated for flu as well as COVID-19.
That was going to be my next question. Obviously, we are encouraging people to get the COVID vaccine if they haven't. But is it still behoove you to get the flu shot if you haven't?
Definitely. Flu is back this season. Last year, we basically had a non-existent season because flu was, like I said, completely gone. Now it's coming back, especially in certain parts of the country, and the vaccine is an easy way to prevent yourself from getting the flu and not even worrying about flu or the flu COVID co-infection.
Okay, let's...
Now, I have to laugh because I thought it was such buffoonery. Now, you will notice that Dr. Amish Shadoza mentioned twice that the flu was non-existent last year. Holly Morrison, for whatever reason, bless her heart, did not question it at all. Doesn't shock me. I like Holly, but I know there's just certain topics, I watch her daily. She's just not going to touch certain things with a 10-foot pole. But I thought it was interesting. So my question that I would have asked had I been Holly, which probably would have got me fired if I worked for that network, but the question I have is, well, Mr. or Dr. Cardoza, where the hell did the flu go? Did it go to a mythical land where the heart attacks, broken legs, appendicitis, blood diseases, etc. went last year? I'm just asking. From the research I've done, it's been made clear that those ailments and many other ailments like the ones I just mentioned, the numbers had gone down on them so much, meaning that when you look at what people were dying from in hospitals, The numbers for anything other than COVID were severely low. They were abnormally low. And so that just, it's a question. Is he saying that the flu went where all of those other ailments went? This is a big issue because, people were in the hospital or going to the hospital for, in many cases, issues other than C19. However, if they ended up passing away, whether it was some broken leg, heart attack, appendicitis, any of those things I mentioned previously, and many more, they were listed as having passed from C19. Now, why is this an issue? Well, it's an issue because Medicare was awarding thousands of dollars for each person that died of C19. Hospitals were receiving $13,000 per death related to C19. And if that patient was on a ventilator, the hospital was awarded even more. They were awarded around $39,000. So during C19, there was, and still now, there's a disproportionate number of all those ailments when compared to C19. Now, you can take from that what you will, but I think this Dr. Shadoza should really stay off the air with the senseless nonsense. Do they really think that we, the people, are that dumb? I mean, obviously, of course they do. But critical thinkers are not going out like that at all. We're just not. So, again, take from that what you will. Moving right along to the insurrection, which I really can't stand that word. But anywho, as of January 6th, it was 1 year since the Capitol Hill riot. I just want to say that the way that the media memorialized that day, in my opinion, was sickening. It was nothing but talk of how 1 year later it was an anniversary of the insurrection and how it was being memorialized. And I found that interesting because, ironically, it did not make mention of any of the folks that passed away that day. I didn't hear one news clip about anyone who had passed away that day, which I thought that's what you would be memorializing when the people passed, not the fact that a riot happened. It's very weird to me to memorialize a riot, but that's what the media would have you to believe, so whatever. But anyway, I digress on January 6th. I think there is a lot more to it than what we know, and I believe that the parties associated with causing the riots or the drama that day may not be who the media necessarily claims, and I'm just going to end it there. The last topic that I want to discuss that was, a major debacle in news this week is the Highway 95 and the snowstorm that occurred on Monday and Tuesday of this past week. Apologies, of this past week. Listen, I watched this thing unfold and I was astonished. I personally don't fool with the elements. When they call for snow, I let Mother Nature, aka God, do his thing, and I go and sit down. Not sit, but set my behind down. Yes, that's exactly what I do. I don't fool with the snow, ice, etc. I for sure don't know. I for sure don't drive out in it. But hey, I guess these folks felt different, and so they decided that they would go out and, beat the snow, I guess. I will say that of all the stories I heard that day about people who were stuck, I was definitely sympathetic with one gentleman who I believe resides in Richmond, Virginia. And he, earlier that morning, had received word about an organ transplant that he had been waiting on. And so he was traveling along 95 because he had a small window of time to get tested and, to get to the hospital and to get tested for this particular organ that he had been waiting for. So he ended up leaving and he was stranded for hours. But finally, I believe he called 911 and two ATVs, like two men on ATVs, came and they basically rescued him and were able to get him to the hospital. His situation was literally life or death. So if someone, God forbid, but if I ever needed a kidney and I got a phone call, that might change my rule on going out in the snow. So for him, I definitely was sympathetic, but glad that he made it to the hospital to get the test that he needed. To all the other folks, all I could say is, I bet you won't try that again. but I'm sure I will be proven wrong, so never mind. Anywho, I'm going to play a clip for you because this is really the reason why I wanted to talk about this story. I'm going to play a clip of the current, well, soon to be ex-governor of Virginia, Governor Northam. And let me just say, everything he said, I was saying about everything that he asked about the people who were on the road in the snow, I was saying on Monday, so days earlier, because this interview didn't occur until, I think this interview was the 7th, so this interview was a day later, but the day before, everything he was asking, I was asking the same questions. So let me just play this interview for him because I just got a kick out of what he said.
We put warnings out. Why don't you start asking some of these individuals that were out on the highway for hours? One, did you know about the storm? Two, why did you feel it was so important to drive through such a snowstorm? And three, in hindsight, do you think maybe you should have stayed home or wherever you were rather than getting out on Interstate 95? I think that would be interesting to hear that side of it. Storm was coming. We put warnings out.
All I gotta say is, oop. That's all I can say to that. He was letting the people have it, honey. He said, y'all will not blame me for help not being there in a timely fashion when y'all shouldn't have been on the road anyway. That's what he said. And listen, I personally, it's hard for me to find blame. Like, everybody has access. They got the phones, they got the TV, the radio. We have all sorts of ways to get information. Social media. I mean, it's just a plethora of ways. Now, y'all knew that snow was coming. Stop it. So, again, I agree with what he said, but Lord knows a governor should not ever say that. I could say it. I'm not in a prestigious position. You all out there who are not in a prestigious position can say it. But at the end of the day, I guess he figured I'm going to be out of this ish on January 15th because he's about to be replaced by Youngkin. So he figured he going to stick it to Virginia because the National Guard was not called that day for that event. And I believe he declared a state of emergency many hours after the incident had happened. So people had been stuck on the road for going on almost 20 plus hours. And yeah, still nothing was being done. So, anywho, additionally, 50 miles of 95 was shut down in both directions, full of these stranded people. So, in freezing temperatures. So, it's a lot. He was wrong on so many levels. I have to laugh because every question that I asked the day before, he said in that interview, and I was not ready, y'all. I was not ready for that. He was wrong on so many levels for including his questioning, but he's out the door. So, there's not much you can do. It's not like he's, up for re-election, none of that. So it is what it is. But Northam, you a trip, honey. Happy retirement or whatever else you fitting to do, because after that, you probably not getting another job elsewhere. Not blaming the people, not the taxpayers whose money is paying for VDOT and all the other services that could have been done that were not done. So again, I don't blame him, but that's something that he should have said behind closed doors and not on Fox 5 DC in the early part of the morning when everybody's watching the news. Sir, it was wrong on so many levels, but it is what it is. Anywho, that is all I have for this week. Thank you so much for joining me for the weekly wrap up. Leave your commentary below if you have any for me. And until next time, toodles. Hey, critical thinkers. Thank you for listening to the Not So Common Sense podcast. Please help elevate this podcast by either liking, sharing, or subscribing based on your listening platform. Until next time, be blessed, think often, and question everything.